So my first speaker is Paula Boddington. He's an associate professor of philosophy and healthcare in the Geller Institute of Aging and Memory at the University of West London. Much of her work has concerned applied topics in medicine, science, and technology, with a particular focus on ethical and philosophical issues arising from artificial intelligence. She is the author of Towards a Code of Ethics for Artificial Intelligence that was published in 2017. She holds degrees in philosophy, psychology, and medical law, and has held academic posts at the University of Bristol, the University of Oxford, and Australian National University. Her talk, Dehumanising Design, How Algorithms See the World, and the Construction of Misogyny. And over to you. You have 15 minutes, and I have this technology here, which I will use towards the end. So over to you.
Okay, thank you very much, Kathleen. And it's really great to be here. I am a bit of an imposter because, as Kathleen explained, I'm a philosopher rather than an anthropologist. So, and my talk is going to be rather an overview of some general issues. So firstly, to begin, what I want to do today is to outline some of the ways in which artificial intelligence helps to foster the conditions under which misogyny can thrive. So AI is not inevitably misogynistic, and some of its specific applications may be neutral or may even counter misogyny. Yet many of its features, separately and together, can create ideal circumstances for enabling, reproducing, and even magnifying misogyny. Unless these are understood, the further entrenchment of misogyny is perhaps inevitable. These features are technical, including features of both software and hardware, as well as the driving ideology and underlying concepts seen behind some interpretations of AI and motivations for developing and applying AI. I can here provide only an overview of the issues. I'm using artificial intelligence in a broad sense, including statistics and machine learning, which many hesitate to describe as AI, and of course, including algorithms. We need to consider AI both as it actually operates technically and in context, and as it is imagined to operate. Secondly, to outline my approach. The ways in which I consider that AI can be potentially misogynistic can be viewed, in summary, as consisting in specific means in which it can be used to depersonalize and to dehumanize. We need to consider the manner in which such depersonalization and dehumanization can occur both by design, by carelessness, and also despite or against any such intention to do so, especially given the combination of factors tending towards the same end by different means. Chief culprits, again, are methodologies which generate reductive accounts of human beings and processes liable to lead to disembodiment and to the prioritization of a free-floating mental self. I do not offer a specific account of misogyny here, other than to say that I take as a starting point that to understand and to prevent misogyny, we must see human beings, and women in particular, holistically, in a social and relational context, and as essentially embodied beings with a particular biology. The specific aspects of female experience and the worst aspects of misogyny, such as the exploitation and commodification of female reproductive and sexual capacities, means that this reductive disembodiment, so readily facilitated by AI, both in its technical and ideological forms, may disproportionately impact women. So, there are different aspects of AI at issue here, which separately may enable misogyny. It's also important to remember, as I want to emphasize, explore how these act together to produce serious, complex, and entangled issues. So the factors I refer to include methods used in software, in particular machine learning algorithms and their collection and analysis of data, the hardware devices used in AI, especially those used in communication, and the driving ideology behind some uses and application of AI, specifically the understanding of intelligence and future aspirations concerning intelligence. So that's the overview introduction. Now for some specifics. Firstly, to start with bias. So bias, what bias? Much of the advance of AI in recent years is down to the rise of machine learning, facilitated also by access to large amounts of data and vastly increased processing powers. The question of bias in algorithms, driven by bias in data and in algorithm design, is well known. However, this is not the problem of which I speak. Indeed, the way in which the issue of bias is popularly understood is itself one of the problems. The issue of algorithmic bias is often presented as a problem caused by the legacies of humanity's prejudice and failings in how data is collected, curated, and classified, against an assumed and imagined unbiased picture of the world. A picture of a world often painted as entirely absent human emotion, prejudice, and partiality, a picture of the complete data set. But this imagined goal by which bias is measured only produces a deeper issue, the question of portraying the world, including us human beings, among them women, as simple amalgams of data points. This complete data set does not exist, except perhaps in the mind of God. Hence, any data set is going to be collected by the imposition of some pre-existing structure or imposed structure, even if this structure is, to us, meaningless. Moreover, the data sets collected by technology are going to be influenced by factors such as ease of collection, cost of collection, commercial viability, and the possibility of resale and multiple uses. But there is more. For moreover, if we see human beings as a collection of points of data, however complete this data is, there is still the question of how this data is put together. Machine learning sees and interprets the world in a way totally different to the way that human beings do. Not only is there a replication crisis in machine learning, such that a machine learning run over the same data set twice might produce different answers. Not only does machine learning frequently make errors no human would ever make. Not only is the way in which it produces an answer frequently entirely opaque to human understanding. My main point is that machine learning observes sets of outward behavior, not even whole people, but parts which it might or might not interpret as a whole person, observes this as an entirely alien outside entity. This is in complete contrast to the reciprocity and relational response to human beings that is an essential aspect of recognizing our humanity. It has been demonstrated that many of the mistakes by machine learning in interpreting and perceiving the world are precisely mistakes that no embodied being would make. We know immediately that an object is not a bicycle because it cannot be sat upon. We understand, to borrow an example of Neil Lawrence, who himself borrowed it from Ernest Hemingway, the 6-word novel, Baby Shoes for Sale, Never Worn, in a way no machine learning ever will. Indeed, when machine learning looks at us, it scarcely even tracks behavior. It tracks change measured via various data points. Note too, how this data is all collected externally from the outside, even if it's referring to physiological aspects of the body, from the gaze of a piece of technology which does not even have a point of view. However, the machine learning is actually part of a socio-technical system. I see it as the equivalent of the unseeing kid in the County Limes gang, below the age of criminal responsibility and hence not to be blamed. The data is in reality collected and controlled by organizations and by people who can interpret this reductive behaviorist view of human beings as if it actually represented the person. This does and can enable profound manipulation and control. If anything, it extends the classic objectification and focus on the body as a concatenation of mere parts, so a characteristic of misogyny, further outwards to the whole human race as subject. Note too, that much of this control and the reductionist views of a person derive from fitting or not into statistical norms. And these are often so hard to say, statistical norms grouped without any sense of human meaning, mere clusterings which permit prediction and control. These need have no relation to any sense of natural order or grouping. There can be a total lack of comprehension from the controlled about the workings of the control. A world of surveillance where humans are constantly monitored for deviation from a norm and for decline, can emerge. Now to consider hardware. Rather different pressures are created by the AI embedded into the hardware of technologies via which we see the world, see each other, and see ourselves. This is a highly complex and mixed area, which I don't have time to examine in much detail here, but communicating remotely through devices does permit valuable communication globally, but can enable a profound sense of disembodiment and tends to foreground a focus on the self, the first person, and on the mental. An illusion of mastery fostered by our control of technology can help in turn to foster a feeling of control over the self. The first person is centered, but simultaneously emptied. To sum up a complex point, it is as if, screen in hand, I am now like Descartes, who sat alone in my stove-heated room with my thinking self. But unlike Descartes, I do not find that I have an idea of a perfect deity who can be trusted not to deceive me. I find, if I look, that there is a controlling group of corporations and interests who view me not as a mind, but as a fragmented body, kept under constant surveillance and controlled by intentionally persuasive technologies. For all the world, like some omnipresent, omnipotent, omnimalevolent pimp. Lastly, to consider AI as ideology. Views not shared by all who work in the area. Indeed, many of those concerned with the technologies themselves resist even the view that AI should be seen as intelligence on a par with human intelligence. Many have warned that if we see the world through such technologies, we will come to see ourselves in terms of the technologies. Prominent amongst those issuing such warnings are not technophobes or outsiders, but those developing and working in tech. I want to highlight three aspects to the ideology. Firstly, the technological fix. A general problem with technology persists, but if there's a problem, not only will technology be able to fix it with enough tinkering, but any technological fix will be better than any alternative. This is one of those beliefs which is obviously false as soon as it is articulated, but which is nonetheless fervently acted upon. It is especially acute in the world of AI because it is of such general application, and amongst many of its advocates, so potentially powerful and set to exceed human intelligence. Hence, apparently, quite what such exceeding consists in is another matter. It lacks the intuition and abductive reasoning that is essential to human intelligence. I'm afraid there's too much detail to go into now, so I have to quickly move on. There's a general tendency and drive to consider that the methodologies of AI are superior to those of a human. What particular forms does this take? We can refer again to the well-worn question of bias in algorithms. A large part of the drive to clean up and produce non-biased algorithms is the hope they will provide impartial solutions to questions tainted by human emotion. This then can present an acceleration towards dehumanization. Second, the instrumental goal-oriented views of intelligence. A common, although not universal, account of intelligence behind ideologies of AI, as seen, for example, in the major textbook by Stuart Russell and Peter Norvig, is an instrumental account of intelligence as efficiently reaching a goal. The goal is orthogonal to this definition, and hence is not subject to any assessment, but is interpreted as human preferences, which readily leads to a utilitarian viewpoint. Combined with a totalizing drive of AI to solve everything perfectly, this then can and does lead to ambitions to eradicate all toil, all pain. This extends to other technologies. Thirdly, the meat sack wetware view of humans. Combined with the encouragement of disembodiment helped by the everyday experience of communicating remotely, an ideology of AI as the attempt to replicate entirely and to exceed human intelligence and consciousness in machines, even if ultimately futile, nonetheless manifests in the meat sack view of human beings as in-between stages of the evolution of life. Literally Life 2.0, in the words of Max Tegmark's best-selling book, Life 3.0. Given my premise that by such means AI potentially harms all humans, but is likely disproportionately to harm women, the mechanisms of misogyny may be greatly amplified. The attitude that biological processes of our bodies are faulty and to be transcended in its entirety, combined with a tendency of fault findings in our bodies that may arise from the surveillance and tracking of outward signs of behaviour. This is manifested in imagined hopes for external gestation devices, since the tribulations of maternity become a problem to be solved, as if women were completely unwilling to suffer even one minor twinge in order to bring life into the world. I include these, although not AI per se, since the talk around them arises within the same worldview and within the same clusters of people who advocate transhumanism via AI technologies, and because it is necessary to understand the vortex of forces within technology which can together produce devastating misogynies. My analysis points to a worst-case scenario for how different aspects of AI and its ideologies may produce misogyny. At its worst, AI enables women to be reduced to a fragmented biology seen from the outside by a literally inhuman observer, produced from a set of data points selected according to a combination of technical possibility, ease and cost of collection, subjected to often impenetrable statistical analysis, and liable to be seen to fit or not to fit with some norm. To this third personal AI, the woman is nothing other than a body in a Skinner box to be manipulated at will by the AI who knows her better than she knows herself. Agency has no place in this picture, and the body is only contingently held together as a unit. At the same time, humans are encouraged to see themselves and each other as though entirely disembodied, entirely mental creatures whose self can be created or decreated limitlessly, and hence with no end to the demands to be placed upon appearance and without reference to the grounding realities of our sexed bodies. The end. I crammed in a lot, I'm afraid, so.
Thank you very much, Paula. And I'm sorry, I did the I've unmuted myself. Yeah, I put the one up too early, so I'm glad you carried on because I was wrong and you were right. In fact, that was perfect timing.